Hi, Karen. This is Wendy. I wanted to respond to your discussion board post, which had really several excellent points. One of the points that really stood out to me that I thought was important also was the adult support is a protective factor for traumatized children. I think that this is just really critical. This stood out to me in our FEMA training for this week that was entitled Planning for Needs of Children in Disaster. So, one of the early and main points that they make is preserving the family unit or helping families stay together. And they describe this as really the greatest intervention to protect children from harm or really further trauma. So they describe, the FEMA training describes, that during separation of children from their families can occur during evacuation or at shelters. And then they list several other circumstances where the child may be in another place when the disaster occurs, so the family's not together. And it's just very critical to try to reunite families in this situation. Um, they cite that children are more likely to be hurt by really a lack of close supervision overall. They list several things, but obviously children can be hurt in debris, may actually be assaulted at shelters if they're alone. Chemicals, pollution, spoiled food. Children can get into things that that they need adult supervision and help with. And of course, the FEMA training recommends that children that are unaccompanied, that adults need to quickly identify these children, try to protect them, maybe by assigning somebody to supervise, report this to try to locate their families as quickly as possible, and maybe do a medical screen because they may have unknown medical conditions that need attention. So I just thought this was really helpful. And also, of course, assault, abuse can occur by strangers at shelters that, where parents are not present, not watching children. And this really stood out to me because in the past I have studied some of this, and in particularly read some accounts of children who went through World War II and were in bomb shelters in London, and just talk about how, um, well, after that, they had an operation to, send the children away from their families to the countryside to really further protect them from the bombing. But apparently, it seems that the separation was more traumatic, probably, than the bombing. Just from accounts that I've read from, children that went through that, and that really they did suffer abuse, assault, being treated very poorly by the families they stayed with. And so this is a real concern. I guess that's a kind of a red flag for me since I've worked with children for many years and in foster care, adoptive homes, and children that are not in care of their biological parents can be at risk for neglect, abuse, assault, things like that. Also, one final point to support that is Worden, 1996, wrote a book, Children in Grief, and talking about traumatic grief, that children who had parents that were emotionally and physically available to them really recovered much more quickly from their trauma symptoms. So that was a 2-year longitudinal study and just very, very interesting. Finally, cultural, another point, cultural considerations. You mentioned that, and I think that also is very important. I had read an article not too long ago, and you mentioned, I guess you mentioned in your post, shared beliefs of healing and trauma creates a safe space for empowering resilience across ages. And I think that's important. It's probably that, maybe if the crisis counselor, shares similar beliefs that, might the children might be more open to that, or adults too. But I also read an article by Watkins and Hook, 2016, that talked about culturally humble psychoanalytic supervision perspective. So this was really an article not only documenting cultural humility as important in the therapy process, but also, how this is applied and learned in counselors being supervised. So the article really does document the importance of addressing culture and give a case example of how a supervisee reported, that asking a client about their culture, the client happened to be Japanese, really opened the door to have the cultural issue on the table at any time, and then also really cemented the rapport with the client. So I think, that was really a learning point for me about culture. So thank you again for your post. Very enlightening, and just take care, and I guess I'll see you in class. Thanks. Bye.